time, because we have a full hour ahead of us, and I want to make sure that Mike Coas has plenty of time. Am I saying it right, Mark? Mike.
You got it. You got it.
So I've known Mike Coas for several years, and I mispronounced his last name for most of those years. And it wasn't until I asked him, "Am I pronouncing your last name right?" And he said, "No." I'm like, "Okay, you pronounce your name." So I met Mike, and I'm not going to do the introduction right this second. I'm going to make sure we have no more announcements or anything to celebrate. But I met Mike at a nonfiction authors meeting when the Houston chapter had just started. And we were meeting in the La Madeleine over at Kimberly and the Beltway. So in Houston, for those of you that are not in Houston. So, so a while ago, and you had not come out with your second book at that time. You were working on the second book. And how many books do you have out now?
I have 4 that I've written, and I co-wrote one with Sharon C. Jenkins. So I guess you could say 5, 4.5, whatever.
Very good. And if you don't know Sharon Jenkins, she is the authorpreneur for Houston. So I do want to say welcome to everyone. This is Monday night, August the 17th. For those of you that are watching the recording, this recording will be available in our private Facebook group. So for anybody that that did not make it, or if you want to go hear it again, because you're going to hear some very valuable information when it comes to marketing your book, it will be in that private Facebook group. So hello, Brian Bearden. Haven't seen you for a while. Brian, I had a call on Friday from our friend Jay Gubert. So I'll have to tell you about that later. So welcome, Delia. We have a call on Thursday, right? So I'll see you on Thursday. Jeremy, hi Jeremy, my buddy. Nice to see you.
I gotta get a call with you soon to talk about the Kickstarter launch.
Okay, good. Can you get with Amy? She's got my calendar now, and she's kind of managing it, so I can maybe make all my meetings now. I missed a few. Yes. Let me see who else. So Athena, I do want to talk about Athena and James. Athena's book launch party will be this Saturday at 7 o'clock, 7 to 8. And we have a couple of other romance writers to add to your list. Athena, I'll get with you and James on that. It's all the book launch event. The party event has been created. Amy did that today. So all of you go and sign up to be there, and then start sharing it now with everyone. The ebook will be 99 cents for the weekend. I have notified the people at the Free Booksy. Hopefully they get the message that it won't be free, so please put 99 cents there. But anyway, so that will be this Saturday. Help us get the word out. Remember, we are the book launch team for each other. So when you have a book launch, we'll be your team. Athena's book launch is this weekend, and she has been there for all the ones before. So Mark and David, who are part of the Rock Hill team, we know you'll be there. So I'm looking forward to this weekend and the fun. We've been having some great times on the book launch parties, some great numbers in the book selling ranks from Amazon. So lots of good stuff going on. Anybody else have anything that's coming up this weekend that we need to make sure we announce? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker for tonight. Most of you know that I have taken the next couple of months off from actually doing the training myself, which I'm still going to be here, so it's not like I'm trying to save that hour, but I'm saving the 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon that I have been putting into getting the training ready. So I've been sometimes taking a nap, sometimes doing other work, but so thank you for staying with us on this. I don't know yet if I have to have surgery. I'll find out on Thursday. I was supposed to find out last surgery, but it got postponed to this Thursday. So, and that's why everything is prepared. Amy's been taking over and doing an amazing job. As a matter of fact, I got a message today on Messenger from the person that introduced me to Amy. Amy was in college in San Antonio and started helping. Was it tutoring you were helping with, Amy, to start with?
It was like cognitive learning. It was different, but yeah.
And so she was helping this person. Her name is, I forgot her name.
It's Michelle Galator.
Oh, Michelle, that's right, Michelle Galator. And I had met Michelle at one of our Live at Choice events. And so she told me, I've got this person, I'm going from a college student, I'm going to get her to start helping me with social media. Is that okay if she helps with yours? And I'm like, of course. And so that was just started history. And she sent me a note today, and she had seen Author Talk this morning. And she said, I'm so excited to see how valuable Amy has become to you and your company. So yay, I love it when people see things like that. So same is true with Mike Coas. Mike has done an amazing job, and I was hoping Haley would be here because she sent me a note last week and said, I feel like I'm all by myself when it comes to marketing my book. Well, Mike was all by himself. So I went to this nonfiction authors meeting. There was Mike. He introduced himself and the book, his first book, which he is a college professor in the evening, and he wrote a book specifically towards college students. And so that was his very first book. Yeah, he's holding it up there. And he said, I'm writing a second book on how to self-publish a book. So he did. He wrote a book, and I go, Mike, you have the best checklist of anyone I've ever seen. So if you buy his book, in there is a checklist for self-publishing your book. And I look through there all the time because I don't have your first book, but I do have the marketing books. So, so he wrote. What was the title on the one you just held up? 14 Steps.
14 Steps to Self-Publishing a Book.
And then the next one was Smart Marketing for Indie Authors.
Right, Smart Marketing for Indie Authors. Right.
So if the two middle books, if you should go get at least the ebook or something, because he's got some. I have both of them, and he has amazing information in there. Lydia says she has that book too. It is very good. And the checklist, I think, is one of the most, I know each chapter is about the checklist, but I think that's one of the most valuable pieces I've seen is that checklist for self-published authors. So thank you, Mike, for doing that. And so since then, I've heard him speak at several of the nonfiction authors. I've had him speak on here before, and I've heard him speak at quite a few events in the Houston area. So CJ says she has the self-published book also. So, hey, we bought a bunch of those books that you sold, Mike. So I asked Mike this week, so we've been talking about marketing in a lot of the meetings. When I met with James's team last week, we talked marketing. Several meetings we've been in, I've been talking marketing, and I'm like, it's time for me to bring Mike Coas back because I know he's not met most of you, and I want him to be back and be here and to talk about marketing for indie authors. So Mike Coas, you are on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here, Sandy. Appreciate the invite. I would like to share my screen. Do I just click the share screen button? Is that all I do?
No, it's not all. So you click that, and then you have to select which screen you want to share.
I got you. And then I hit the share button.
Yes.
Let me know. Can you see that?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. We're ready. Okay, so let's see how that looks now. There we go. Perfect. All right, so let's move on here. So a little bit about me. Well, the most important thing's in red. I'm the Hello Kitty fan club president. You probably didn't know that about me, Sandy.
No, I did not know that.
That's my Hello Kitty glasses. I wear them all the time. Mostly.
Yes.
But I am a tax attorney, which is just a fancy way to say I'm a geek. So that's what my day job is. And one night a week, I teach at Lone Star College. I love that job. It's a lot of fun. And I teach business law. And that's what my first book is about, is college teaching tips. And then I'm an author. I've written 4 or 5 books, and then I frequently speak on topics, some of, related to my books. Enough of that. Let's see. I love this quote. I think I shared it last time I was here, but for those who didn't see it, marketing is really just about sharing your passion. I really like that concept, because that really is what marketing is, at least in my eyes. So today I want to talk about 3 main things. I want to talk about numbers, sales numbers, and the pandemic impact on sales for all of us, really. And then I want to talk about my book selling formula and the different components, which is an appealing book, social proof, and visibility. We'll get into that in a minute. So let's just jump right into it. So I want to talk a little bit about numbers. I've been an author for 3.5 years, going on 4 years, and I've averaged around 1,000 books a year. So I've sold 3,300 or so. And that's not super impressive. It's just, I wanted to give you a sort of a flavor of where I am. And I think the first year I sold 750, and then the second year I sold 1125, and last year I sold just a few under 1,000. This year will probably be a little under 1,000 thanks to COVID. I have a new book that just came out during COVID. That was an interesting experience. But the key thing I want to bring up here is the importance of tracking your sales. So for everybody that's on the call, give me a thumbs up if you routinely track your sales, if you already have a book out, like at least once a week, once a day, once a month. Give me a thumbs up. Is anybody doing that? I see Julie, James, I see some, okay, good. So I think that's important, and there's 2 reasons. The first is just finding trends. So I think a lot of authors discovered, that their books sell readily well during December, Christmas and so forth, the holidays. And then for me, I discovered my self-publishing guide is very popular in January, February. And my guess is a lot of authors, that's their, it's on their list for their New Year's list. They want to improve themselves. And so they think, you know what, this is the year I'm going to write that book. So I think that's why my self-publishing guide is very popular in January, February. For some reason, my college teaching tips book is popular in May. I think it's because professors and adjuncts get out and they're looking for something on their summer reading list. I suspect that's why it's popular in May. I don't really know. But here's probably the more critical piece of this is, if you don't measure your sales, you really don't know if all the marketing tactics that you're trying, the new stuff, if it's effective or not. And so that to me is the main reason why everybody should be looking at your sales. I do it daily, but I'm very OCD. I would recommend at least doing it once a week. But yeah, I think it's important. And then once a month, I actually record my sales of each book, and I do it per format, like ebook, paperback, hardcover, audiobook, all those things. And then I look for trends, and over time I can figure out which months my sales are usually up and which months my sales are usually down. And then I can kind of work with my marketing strategies accordingly. But just out of curiosity, like, which of the 4 books, Sandy, do you think is my best-selling book? Remember, I have a self-publishing guide. I have a book selling guide, if you will, college teaching tips, and then my brand new one is an off-road racing book, which is brand new. So obviously that's not going to be my best-selling book. But what do you think, Sandy?
I would say you're smart marketing for indie authors.
Ah, that's a great guess, and it's the worst-selling book I have.
Oh, really?
How embarrassing is that? My book about book selling is my worst-selling book. It's not. It's a good book, I promise you. It's got good reviews. I've won 4 awards. It has like 26 Amazon reviews, 4.2 right now is the average. It's a great book, but I think the problem is it's in a very crowded market, and there's a lot of wonderful books out there already. Joanna Penn, Mark Dawson, all these, Derek Murphy, Dan, what was it, Pointner, the guy, yeah. There's tons of great books out there on book marketing, and that's the only thing I can come up with, and I knew that going in, because I'd heard Derek Murphy, who was my book cover designer for my first book, and you know him well. He's very good on marketing, and he does
Love Derek Murphy. Yes.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So he had mentioned in some of his YouTube videos and on Facebook once or twice that it's a tough market to sell that book because there's so many great authors that have already hit that very same topic. So I'm not really too embarrassed, but it is kind of ironic that my book about book selling is the worst one. But actually, my best-selling book is the Self-Publishing Guide. So that one, and the good news is I spent the least amount of money on that book. So that makes me really happy. I think I spent $1,500 to self-publish it and market it through the first 90 days. So I needed to sell 700 copies to break even. And to date, I've sold like 1,700 copies. So I'm very happy with that book. It still sells really well. I think I sold 10 over the weekend online. So, so I'm really happy with that book. It's still going strong. I've been very excited about that book. The second best-selling book is the first book about college teaching tips. I've sold 1,400. The bad news is I spent way too much money on my first book. I spent like $6,500, $7,000 on that book, and I needed to sell 2,000 books to break even, and I've sold 1,400. So that, you know, but if I didn't write the first book, I wouldn't have wrote the others. So, you know, it's not all bad, right? So anyway, that's a little bit about me, and I've already asked you about doing your tracking your sales. Let's move on to the next topic, which is how did things go for everyone really during the pandemic? I've heard from, you know, through the grapevine on Facebook, some fiction authors said they did really, really well during the pandemic, and hopefully that applies to some of the folks on this call, on this WebEx or Zoom. I'm a nonfiction author. All my books are nonfiction, and mine were dismal. They were awful. From mid-March through mid-May, I just was slammed. I was getting no sales to speak of. My worst month ever was April of this year. I sold 21 books. Before that, my worst month ever, which was a couple years earlier, was like 44 books. So usually I sell 50 to 100 on any given month, you name it, any year. It's always 50 to 100. I think one time in December I sold 218. That was just, you know, my best month ever. But 21 books, that's not even one a day. That was just really bad for me personally. And I don't know, I tried to change my marketing, my ads for Amazon, nothing was working. And then for whatever mysterious reason, in the middle of May, it's like a light switch went off and all my sales went back to normal. I sold 70 in June, which is typical. I sold 72 in July. This month is going normal. So I don't know what it is. I just know the pandemic was bad for me. But I wanted to ask everyone out there, everyone give me a thumbs up if your sales were better than normal, a thumbs down if they were worse, or 0 if you got about the same.
And some people have already been answering while you were talking and saying, CJ said hers had been steady. Okay. James said Mark is doing great. That's the cyberpunk book. Okay. And John's is growing. His was a science fiction book. So yay, good.
Sounds like the fiction was good then. That's what I've heard from others. It made sense to me that everyone's books would go up though, because logically everyone's home. They can't go do anything else for fun. I figured they would buy fiction and nonfiction, but it sounds like fiction were the real winners. But I'm happy for them because I think it's great. I'm glad that some people got a benefit out of it. So that's good. Okay, with all that said, let's jump into the meat of this presentation, which is all about book selling and all this actual strategies and so forth. So I want to start with the formula, and that's the way I start the Smart Marketing book. Is I walk through this formula, and this is just me thinking very logically and trying to figure out the basic components of what does it take to sell a book. And I came up with these 3 things, and you really need all 3 to sell a book, in my opinion. And the first is an appealing book, and that's just what it sounds like. It's well written, it's well edited, so you don't have a lot of typos and grammar errors. And you have a professional cover that's appropriate for your genre, and you have a professional cover design, all that. So it's an appealing book. It's what it sounds like. The second component is you have to have social proof, and I'm sure we're all familiar, everyone on this call, but in my mind, I think of social proof as a third-party validation that the book is as good as advertised. So it's somebody else saying that this is a great book. And then the last piece of the puzzle is visibility. And to me, that's just, you're trying to stand out amongst the millions of books that are already on Amazon. And, you know, you think about 1,000+ new books every day, and your book is trying to stand out amongst them. So that to me is the formula. And at the bottom of the slide, I mentioned an important point, which is that you really need all three at the same time. And the reason I say that is, you know, like diet books, recipe books, those are popular. But if you let's say, for example, you came up with a recipe book that has mud, you know, dirt, right, in every recipe. So you made mud pie, mud soup, you freeze them, and it's a dessert. It's mud sickles. You know, it sounds gross, right? Nobody would want to buy that book. And it doesn't matter how much social proof or visibility you have. You could give away 50 books to all your friends and family about mud recipes and convince them all to write 5-star reviews on Amazon. You have wonderful social proof. You can buy a whole bunch of ads on Amazon and get all kinds of visibility on social media. And again, I don't think the target audience is there. I don't think you're going to have an appealing book. There's not enough people that want that book. So you really need all three things to have a successful selling book. Does that sound fair, Sandy?
It does, because I know that in my experience, any one of those missing, especially that appealing book. So you mentioned the editing, and that to me, like, if the book doesn't flow well, if it has typos, there's just so many things that if a person is having difficulty reading the book, then it just plays out for sales. The word will get out.
Right.
And people will say, you know, that would be a great book if. And so that's why we really do encourage. But I'm glad you said all three of them, because that really is extremely important. Oh, Brian Bearden said mud wrestlers might be interested in the mud pie book.
There you go. Well, there's one sale right there. Okay, so now I'm going to go through each of those three components in a little more detail. The first is an appealing book, and one of the strategies that I think is important is to create a book proposal. And for those who are unfamiliar, there's different ways to get for example, a book, you know, pitched to publishers. You can go get a book agent, right? Or you can skip that step and do your own book proposal and pitch it to a medium or small press publishing house, if you will. I don't think the big 5 publishing houses, Penguin and all of them, they're not going to take book proposals unless you have a literary agent, is my understanding. I could be wrong.
No, I think you're absolutely right on that.
Right, but I do think it's an important strategy to prepare a book proposal, even if you have a literary agent, or, you know, even if you think you might go down that road and you're not going to pitch it yourself. Just doing the exercise of creating a book proposal is important for the writing process, so that you make sure you identify your target audience, and you have to understand that going in, so that you can make sure that you write an appealing book that satisfies your target audience. So that's a very important piece of it. You get other things from creating a book proposal, because you're going to look at your competitors in that genre, figure out their pricing, which will help you create your own budget. For example, in my latest book called Texas Off-Road Racing, it's actually a book about off-road racing that me and my son, we raced together, and we had a lot of fun, and we won the series last year. It's a small local series in Texas, and I decided to create a book. And I looked online, and motorsports books about racing, it's not a big market. You know, it might be if you're one of the famous racers out there, you might be able to get a following that'll buy the book. But for, nobody like me, nobody's heard of Mike Coas. I'm not a well-known racer. I'm just a local guy who's raced for a number of years, but it's not a big market is my point. And so I knew going in, there's probably not going to be a big budget for this book. Now, that doesn't mean I don't write the book. It just means I have to be very cost conscious as I write the book and don't overspend, because there's a good chance I won't get my money back on this one. But how did I know that? I had to do the research. I looked for competition and figure out, well, how many books are out there selling, motorsports autobiographies, which is kind of what this is. And there's not a lot. And so I had to be careful with my pricing. And another reason that gave me pause for this book is that the books that are out there are roughly $10, $15, and mine is $20. Why is that? Because I decided to put a bunch of color pictures in there. I have about 40 pictures, plus I have race flyers from all my races last year. They're in color as well. And so I thought it was important to have it in color. And so that made the cost to produce the book very, very expensive, like $17 and change. That's the minimum price I could sell to earn like a penny on Amazon. So I priced it at $19.99. I still make less than $2, but that was another price or another consideration that I knew I wasn't going to make a ton of money on the book. But I decided to do it anyway. I was just very conscious of how much money I spent. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But doing this book proposal and looking at your competition and their pricing, thinking about your special marketing opportunities. For me, because I race, I decided I could probably try to sell the book to my fellow competitors, you know, in the series, because they might be interested in that. Or I found other series in Texas and beyond in off-road racing. And so I've sent a bunch of free books to all these different racing organizations to hand out to their racers just to get the word out. So I gave a bunch of free books away to different racing organizations. So that's the kind of thing you think about when you build your book proposal. And I think that's all part of creating an appealing book. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so another piece of it is hiring a professional editor. And again, just like Sandy said, you don't want a bunch of typos and grammar mistakes. People aren't going to finish the book. If they get frustrated in the first 2 chapters because you keep misspelling things, you have horrible grammar, they'll get frustrated. And the worst, I guess the best thing that they just not read the rest of the book. The worst thing is they'll go to Amazon and leave a 1-star review, and you get a couple of those and boom, nobody's going to buy your book because you have no social proof. So that could be a real deal killer. So it's very important that you hire a professional editor. Now, I will tell you with the last book, I normally hire a professional editor to do copy editing, and that's one of the more expensive pieces of self-publishing. And I found an editor who's really big in motorsports. He's written all kinds of motorcycle journal, magazine articles, and his own books. And his name is Pat Hahn. And I really wanted to hire him to be my copy editor for this last book, but it was $1,400, and that's a very reasonable price. There's nothing wrong with his price, but looking at my market and how much money I was going to have to spend, it did not make sense because I don't think I'd make that money back. I would probably have to sell like 2,800 books to pay for his copy editing. And I thought, man, that just doesn't make sense. So at the end of the day, I hired a proofreader, and that was $100. And that way I still made sure there's no typos, no grammar mistakes. And I'd already self-edited this book more or less because every time I race, I do a race write-up, and I spend 3 or 4 hours to write a 3 or 4 page race write-up. So last year, as I raced, I had on my website a race write-up, and I had self-edited for 3 or 4 hours, each little 3 or 4 page thing. And really, that's what this book is. It's a combination of all these race write-ups. I added pictures and race flyers. I added an introduction paragraph and a conclusion, and that's pretty much the whole book. So it kind of wrote itself. I was just trying to be very cost conscious because I didn't think I would sell a ton of them. And so far, I've sold about 35 or 40 in the first 2 months. That's not bad, but it's not going to be a big seller, and I'm okay with that. But anyway, back to my point. Also, I do think it's important to hire a professional cover design and make sure the cover looks appropriate for your genre. So, you know, we all know if you're writing romance, you know, there's a picture of a poor kid who cannot afford a t-shirt. You've seen that, right? All the romance novels, the guy has no shirt on, and it's because he can't afford a shirt. And I feel bad for the guy. I want to buy the book so that he can afford to buy himself a shirt. I think that's part of the strategy, though, right? That makes me want to buy the book. So anyway, I digress.
You got it. You understand the romance. For sure.
Exactly. That's how I figured it out. That's why it's the best-selling genre, right? Everyone wants to buy it to help the poor guy get a shirt. So anyway, so most genres have a certain look about them on the cover. You want to make sure that your cover design looks appropriate for that genre. And so anyway, these are all part of making an appealing book. And so I think it's very important to do that. I also use a professional graphic designer to make an ebook and to do the print formatting. And that makes it look nice, and you have clean margins and so forth. So this is all part of an appealing book. Now I'm going to walk through a little bit more detail of each one of these without spending too much time. So the book proposal, there's different components of a book proposal. And I don't have the book in front of me, but the name of it that I recommend to help you write a book proposal is at the bottom of this slide, The Essential Guide to Getting Your Book Published. And that's by Ariel Eckstedt and David Sterry. That's a great book. I really like that book. Anyway, that book is what taught me to do a book proposal. And in the back of my Smart Marketing book, I actually have my book proposal that I used for my first book in there as an example to show you what it looks like. But anyway, you're going to walk through the overview of your book in the book proposal, which helps you with your elevator pitch, right? Everyone needs to have an elevator pitch, a very succinct, couple of sentences to be able to describe your book and just enough detail to describe what it's about and pique their interest. Another thing you're going to do in the book proposal is create your bio or resume, and that would be your relevant credentials. If you've already written other books or other articles or any other writing in that same genre, that would be relevant, I would think. If you're writing nonfiction, you would want to show that you have expertise in that topic. That would be good. And so these are the things you want to put together when you're doing your book proposal. The next is your target audience, which to me is probably the most important piece of the book proposal. And you want to be realistic because the whole world, regardless of how awesome you think your book is, it's not going to be the whole world. The whole world is not going to want to read your book, believe it or not. So you have to be realistic, but it can't be too narrow, right? If you're going to write a book about the dating behavior of South American llamas, you're not going to sell a lot of books, right? There may be 3 scientists in the world that are interested in that book. So you want to think about writing a book that caters to a relatively realistic size target audience, not the whole world. So you want to think about that. Look at your competition. Look at their cover designs. Look at their pricing. And then that will help you with your budget. Like for my first book, it was about college teaching tips, and a lot of the books are traditionally published. Many of them are $30 a pop. And so that gave me a lot of leeway to go in and try to be cheap, start out at $10 a pop or whatever. And so that gave me some leeway. And I knew over time, as the book started selling and I got more reviews and I won awards, I could ratchet up the price, which I did over time. And that way I could try to, earn more of my money back that way. Now on the Smart Marketing book, there's a ton of them out there, and a lot of them are priced, $10 or less. Ebooks are super cheap, $5 or less. So I had to be really careful with that book. I only spent like $2,000 on that book. But again, I need to sell, I think 750 copies, and I've only sold a little less than 200. So I'm not there yet. But I knew going in what I was up against. I had an idea of how many I might sell and how much money I was willing to spend, and all that's part of this book proposal. Special marketing opportunities. I teach at Lone Star College. So one of the things I thought about doing, and I actually did this, was to reach out. I found out that every college, including mine where I teach, has a professional development department. They call it different names, but every college that I'm familiar with all has their own department where they have special books or training programs to help instructors learn how to teach and effectively communicate with their students. So I decided to send a free book to every, not every, but like a couple of dozen colleges around Texas and Louisiana. So I did a lot of research to find out what's the name of the department, who do I mail it to, that sort of thing. And I sent out all these free books. And then I followed it up about 6 weeks later with another letter and asked them, and I said, hey, this is a free book for your library for that program. Please share it with your instructors. And I was hoping that they might like it and buy some books. And so 6 weeks later, I never got a response, and I sent another letter, and I got no response. So it did not pay off. But I'm glad I tried it. I thought it was creative. I will say one college in like Tennessee bought 30 books like a year later. I don't think it had anything to do with my little Texas, Louisiana program that I sent out the free books for. But anyway, it was worth a shot. You have to think about special marketing opportunities like I did. I sent out free books to the racing organizations around Texas with my latest book. So that was, again, you're thinking about how can I reach my target audience? How can I get those people to be aware of my book, whether it's giving away freebies or whatever it is. So this is the kind of thing you're going to think about with the book proposal. Did I miss anything, Sandy?
I think you've done a great job. And Mike, you know, one of the things I love about you and appreciate is your honesty. I mean, you didn't come, and I knew this about you before I asked, that you didn't come in here tonight and say, you know, how many books you've sold, but you've been very honest about how much you spend, how much you've recovered, and all that. And I think that's what people need to know going in is you have to be careful. You know, it's fun to spend a lot of money, but make sure you're spending it in the right direction so that you can have some hope of having a return on your investment. So, and I know that's really important to you being a tax attorney. So,
Right. If nothing else, I'm transparent. I try to be transparent. I want other people to know the good and the bad of everything, and I try to reflect that in my books and all the advice I give. And I'll leave it with one little last thought on that, being transparent. If I had one thing I could do over, I would not be so transparent with my family, my kids, because I made the mistake of telling my teenage son that I needed to sell 2,000 books to break even because I spent a bunch of money on the first book. And then, so every time after I told him that, we'd be sitting around the dinner table and I'd have a big day. I'd sell like 10 books or something in one day, which is big for me. And I would be bragging to my family, hey, I had a great day. I sold 10 books. And the first thing out of my little smart-aleck son would be, well, that's great, Dad. How many more you got to sell before you make a profit? So anyway.
You taught him well.
I know, right? Too well, too well. So anyway, that's the book proposal. We're going to move on. So these are just some of the copy editors I've used in the past, are Jeff Smith and Kurt Locklear. Kurt is a local author from the Woodlands. I used him on the Smart Marketing book. He did a great job. He was around 3 cents a word in case people are curious. Jeff Smith was a little more than 4 cents a word. I used him on my first couple of books. He's really, really good. They both have their strong points. The one thing I liked about Kurt that I didn't see in Jeff Smith, Jeff Smith's background is that he worked for Scholastic, which is famous for K through 12 education books. He was an editor for them for 6 years before he does this freelance work now. That's why I chose him for my first book, and I liked him so much. I used him again and again. And he's really good about knowing all the MLA, grammar rules and all that. He's really good. Kurt, the one thing I loved about Kurt that he did that Jeff did not do is that Kurt looked for white space. So in Kurt's eyes, he wants to see a page that has some white space, whether you have short paragraphs or use bullet points, especially for nonfiction, use bullet points. So if I flip through my first book, it's very common to see wall-to-wall words and not very much like this right here. Not really much white space. But if you look at any page that I turn to here in my Smart Marketing, it's broken up and there's more, little shorter paragraphs usually, and there's bullet points. And so that's the kind of thing, because the concept was today's readers are more like Twitter fans, right? They're looking for 280 characters. They have a short attention span. They don't want to be inundated with too much at once. So that was the concept, and I really like that. So now I try to incorporate that concept whenever I'm writing, use shorter paragraphs, bullet points if I can, that sort of thing.
And so I think, Mike, that's true of fiction as well. I mean, okay. It's overwhelming to look at a book and see nothing but words from, like you showed the 2 pages side by side that had words. And that's pretty, even if you love the book, it looks like a long way to go through it. So I do think that's something that fiction authors should keep in mind as well.
Good point. So another way to find good editors is you can go to Joanna Penn, who I love, love, love. She has wonderful podcasts, YouTube videos. I'm a big fan. I bought some of her books. She does both fiction and nonfiction. Her website is thecreativepenn.com. Lots of free advice and wonderful, helpful resources there. And she has a list of editors that she recommends. That's just another place to find editors if you're looking for one. Also, I'm a big believer in the cover designers. Now, it's true you can go to KDP and upload, your ebook, and there's a tool there where you can make a free cover design. The good news is it's free. The bad news is it looks free. So don't do it, okay? Even if worst case scenario, you've got no money to your name, I would go pay a college kid, like someone on Fiverr who does this stuff and they know how to create and design. That's better than doing your own cover design. Please don't do that unless you, maybe that's your talent and you do cover designs. That's great. But if you don't do it, I'd recommend hiring somebody. The last people I used Derek Murphy from my first one. I love that design. He came up with a really good one. But he no longer does those. And so for that reason, I can't recommend him because he's not in the market anymore. But the last guy from my last two books was Rob Williams from ilovemycover.com. I don't care if you use this guy or not, but I've had good luck with the last two cover designs. And if you mention this COAS 30%, you'll get a 30% discount, which I was a little miffed about because I told him I give speeches to groups like this, and he offered the discount, and I only got a 20% discount when I bought my cover from him. So I was a little miffed about that, but I don't care if you use him or not. My one recommendation, though, is whenever you're finding a cover designer, find someone that has experience making covers in your genre. I think that's real important, that they have covers that look appropriate in your genre and they have good experience and you like the covers. There's a monthly book cover contest, and I'm trying to think of what that, it's something like, what's that? Are you familiar with it, Sandy? There's a monthly book, it's free ebook cover design contest. It's like bookcover.com or something like
Joel
that.
Friedlander. If you just Google Joel Friedlander, and then
Okay, maybe that's
on the side of his website, you'll see an option for the monthly book cover contest.
okay, wonderful.
I did not know that. Thank you, Mike and Julie. That's great. I'll look that up because I do know Joel Freelander. I bought a lot of stuff from him in the past.
So I like to go look at those types of cover design contests because a lot of times they'll show the winners and it'll show who designed it. And so then you can go to their website and look at their background and look at all their other portfolio. That's how I found Derek Murphy. And so that's a great way to find award-winning artists, if you will, that make cover designs. Oh, and by the way, as far as costs go, I think typically 300 to 500 is the kind of the going rate. You can spend more. I spent 830 on the one that Derek Murphy did. He did a great job, but that was a little much. So now I love my cover. I think I spent $310 on the last, and that was both an ebook and a paperback. So just to give you an idea of cost, I typically look for the $300 to $500 range. You could spend a lot more if you wanted, but I don't see the point. I already mentioned that. Graphic designer, I always use Pulgara Studio. I used somebody else for the first book. It was extremely expensive. I won't say the name, but it was a company out of Canada, and they're well known, and they do cover design. They do graphic design, which is the graphic design is just your interior formatting, and they convert it to an ebook. And Pulgara Studio is extremely professional, very reasonable, like maybe $100 to $150 for my books. If you have a lot of graphics or pictures, it can be more expensive, but I don't think I've ever paid more than $150 to do the graphic designer work. And they're usually very professional, very quick within a few weeks, unless it's close to Christmas, then you need to plan accordingly because they're slammed around Christmas. But anyway, I really like Pulgara Studio. It's a husband and wife out of Australia, and they've done a lot of work for Joanna Penn and Mark Dawson and others too. Okay, so this is just a summary, and this is all in my book, but I kind of put a summary together of tables. I talk about the different things that it takes to have an appealing book and their costs and how much time it takes. Now we're going to move on to the second component, and that is social proof, and I'll try to pick up the pace here. Social proof, again, is third-party validation that your work is as good as it says it is in your ads. And so I look for things like Amazon reviews, and right out of the gate, I try to get 10 reviews as quickly as I can. And I will tell you with this one that just came out this summer, June 1st was the soft launch date. I'm really, really happy. I've already got 22 reviews, and that's since June 1st. And it's a 4.7 average on Amazon. So I'm really happy with the reviews I've gotten. I've gotten at least 10, which was my goal to get them within a month. And there's different ways to get reviews. We'll talk about that later if we have time. But that's an important component because I know everyone, when you look at Amazon, at least I do, the first thing I look at is what do other readers say? You know, what are customer reviews? And then a lot of times I look at the negative ones because you're going to get some fluff. You know, the first 5 reviews are usually from family members. They're going to say it's the best thing since the Bible, you know, even if it's not true, right? And then after you get 10 reviews or so, then you're going to start getting more honest reviews. and I usually go right to the negative reviews. And if the worst reviews are it's too short or some kind of weird review, I just ignore those, and then I'll start looking at the rest of the reviews. But I think that's a great way to get social proof. And another thing is editorial reviews. And for those who are unfamiliar, Kirkus Reviews is a very popular one. A lot of traditional publisher companies will hire Kirkus or Clarion or Blue Ink or all these different companies, and they'll do editorial reviews, which I think it's an important piece, especially if you want to get into libraries and get your book sold to libraries. But if you're not really focused on library sales, I don't recommend the more expensive ones, and I'll tell you some alternatives in a minute. But that's a great way. It's a third party, and they've looked at your review. And for those who are not familiar, editorial reviews, you're not paying for a 5-star review. You're paying for an honest review. And so all you can do, if they write a review and they hate your book and they point out all these typos, all you can do is tell them not to publish it. You cannot make them write a positive 5-star review for you. So it's not an unethical thing. You're not paying them for a good review. You're paying for an honest review. And so some people don't understand how that works. So I just want to point that out. Next is blurbs. And I don't have a lot of blurbs. I haven't done that in the past, but I think it is an important component. Like some people call them testimonials. If you can find famous people or well-known people or celebrities or maybe other authors that are famous in your genre, get somebody to write blurbs, or even if they're average Joes, that's better than nothing, and put the best ones on the back cover or maybe on your website. That's a great way of getting social proof. And I just want to share with you a few. I didn't have any on my latest book about racing, so I made some up. I'll say that again. I made up my own blurbs, okay? Listen to this. This is good. Awesome. I love this. Texas Off-Road Racing is the best book I've ever read. And that was from Mike's mom. Okay, so the next one is, this book reminds me of The Fast and the Furious, but without the fast. That's from Mike's literary agent. I don't have a literary agent, by the way. And I'll leave it one. This is the last one I'll bore you with. I've got more in the book. Oh my God, you took our son off-road racing. I thought you guys went fishing. That's from Mike's shocked wife. So there you go. I made up my own blurbs. Easy to do, right? It's fun. So if nothing else, make them up, whatever. Other ways you get social.
That's a great idea. I honestly never have heard of that before. Never thought of that before, but that's great. I love that.
I've been thinking about it for years, about just doing something silly like that. It's obviously a joke. And I never have until I decided with this book, what the heck? And I wrote like 10 of them, and I put the 3 best ones on the back cover. The rest are inside. I don't know. I've never seen that done before. Maybe someone's done it. I don't know. It sounds like something fun to do. So, and the funny thing is, that's the thing that people compliment me the most about the book. They like those fake testimonials. I was like, what about the rest of the book? I wrote 136 pages, and they're telling me they love the testimonials, which is, I guess, better than nothing, right? So you can win book awards, and that's kind of my strategy. You can do bestseller status, which is a great strategy, especially if you have a big email list. And I recently lost over 350 people on my email list. That's kind of a long story. It's a sad story. It's all my fault. Long story short, don't screw up when you're messing with your MailChimp account, because you can easily lose everything. So I started over. So I haven't done the bestseller status strategy, which is very common. It works. It's great. Instead, I do book awards. And again, it's just third-party validation that your work is good. So let's talk a little bit about book reviews. I see that we're kind of run low on time, but I'll quickly go through 1 or 2 of these. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I do a lot of book giveaways. That's a big part of my strategy. So with the latest book about Texas off-road racing, I think one reason I got so many reviews so quickly is that I gave away like 150 books. And so I gave them away to a lot of people I race with. I gave like 35 away to the people I race with in that organization. And I gave them away to other organizations. I do a lot of like contests, raffles, that sort of thing. And so that's important. But whenever I do a book giveaway, I always make sure it's not a quid pro quo. Amazon will not let you give away a book in exchange for a review. That's a no-no. So instead, I will say, hey, here's the book. Hope you enjoy it. By the way, if you enjoy it, I would appreciate it if you would consider leaving an honest review. I never require it. It's not part of the exchange or the giveaway conditions. It's just a mere suggestion. So that's what I do. Another thing you can do, and I'll move away to the next slide, but this one is review packages. You're all familiar with BookBub, right, Sandy? So that's a popular one, but it's hard to get because they only take like 20% of the authors that apply for the big feature, BookBub thing where they share a discount ebook with all their readership, and they have like millions of people on their email list. So really what you're paying for is access to the email list. And so they have another one, self-publishing review. It's much cheaper. It's like $350, and they don't guarantee it, but it's roughly 7 to 10 reviews. And so it's a similar thing. They'll blast out your email price, which has to be discounted $2.99 or less, and you'll expect roughly 7 to 10 reviews for that. So that's what I do, and that usually greases the skids, as they say. So that's all I have for reviews. I've already talked about editorial reviews. A quick tip: Publishers Daily Reviews does them for like $100. Selfpublishingreview.com, which is the website I just mentioned, they also do reviews, editorial reviews for like $89. So those are great alternatives if you don't want to spend the big bucks on Kirkus or Clarion. And this is also, by the way, great to have an editorial review because you can upload it yourself. These do not go in the customer review section. If after you have your book online, you can go to your your Author Central page, and you can upload your editorial review there, and it shows up on the website, on the Amazon page, under editorial reviews. It's not a customer review. Blurbs, we talked about those. Book awards. The only thing I would say is that I've highlighted on the screen, I would recommend you check out this website that ALLI puts out, and they have sort of given you, they sort of review different book awards and tell you which ones to avoid, which ones are scams. If you're looking for a book award contest, I recommend the ones that have a bunch of categories. Some of them have only like 7 categories, and one of those is nonfiction. So that means my little book about college teaching tips could compete against somebody's harrowing tale of their grandpa's escape from Nazi Germany. I have 0 chance of winning that award, right? So I look for ones that have maybe 50 or 70 categories. Some of them are like very niche, very good, very appropriate. Some are like higher education books. So that's perfect for mine. And so my first book. So that's the kind of thing you look for, and that gives you at least a better shot. And all you have to do is win 1 award, and then what can you call your book, Sandy?
A bestseller.
Not bestseller, award-winning. Award-winning.
Oh,
right?
award-winning. Okay,
Right.
so sorry, I was trying to type that URL in real quick while you were talking.
Okay. Yeah. So that's all. The goal is just to win 1. If you win more, that's gravy. But all you need is 1, and you can advertise it as award-winning. Bestseller. I won't go into details because we don't have a lot of time. But it really helps if you have a street team or a launch team, and if you have a bunch of fans that are willing to review your advanced reader copies. Maybe go online the first day and buy them for 99 cents and leave.
So everyone in this group has a launch team. That's what this group is. And I have put together a list of the things that we do for each launch that we do, Amy and I, and that each one can do, what everybody can do. So that's kind of like the book launch team guidelines. So there is no reason for anybody in this group not to have a bestseller if they let us know in time that we could really put it together.
Oh, wonderful. That's excellent. That's excellent. All right. So this is the little summary of that. Now I'm going to move on to the last piece of the puzzle. That's visibility. And it looks like I have like 5 minutes left. So I'll just quickly go through this. So visibility, again, just to recap, you're trying to stand out. You want your book to stand out amongst the millions of books already on Amazon. How do you do that? There's lots of different things you can do. I have been really successful, thankfully, buying Amazon ads. Since day 1, I've had Amazon ads for all of my books, and some of them I still have and some I don't, because some are more effective than others over time, depending on things like your average Amazon review, things like that. So about 1/3 of all of my book sales, so about 1,000 books out of my 3,300 sales, have come directly from Amazon ads, Amazon ads. So I'm a big believer in buying ads. My Facebook ads don't seem to generate many sales. I get a couple of likes, and that helps with visibility on Facebook. But I honestly can't say that my Facebook ads, and I bought book ads on Goodreads and Google. I've tried lots of different things. I'm always trying new stuff. Amazon ads are still effective, and I still use them to this day. Author interviews, I did one with Red. I think Red is on the call. I did an author interview with him, 2 of them last week for Nonfiction Author Association. So that's always good exposure. You can do speeches. I do about 20 a year, although right now I'm doing them all online. And so, you know, because of COVID, we don't have a choice. And so that's a great way for visibility. You can do book signings, book fairs, distribute press releases, create author website. By the way, I learned how to do my author website from watching a YouTube video that Joanna Penn put out. I watched it one time and I took a lot of notes and I created my website in one weekend. I was really impressed with myself. And one little tip about that, if you're going to do an author website, don't call it the name of your first book. Okay, I did that. That's a horrible mistake. That's not the way to go, because what happens when you get your second book, which mine came out like 4 months after my first book? I was like, uh-oh, I'm going to have to create a whole new website, or what am I going to do? So to get to my second book, you had to go to engagingcollegestudents.com/self-publishing-guide. That was horrible, absolutely horrible. So eventually I got smart and I created a new website, just mikecoas.com, and that's where you'll find me today. And all my books are there, my speeches, etc. So I recommend, if nothing else, come up with a generic website name like your name, CJ Writes, whatever, something generic. And then you can set up your Author Central page. That's free. I think we all know about that. Be active on social media. It looks like we're running out of time here, so I don't want to slow anybody down. But that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it all. I'm happy to take any questions or whatever y'all want to do now.
So if you want to unshare your screen, then we will go back to being able to see everybody. There we are. So did you enjoy that? Did you get something out of that? Because if you didn't, it's hopeless. You might as well quit. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I want you all, but here's what you need to know, is that marketing requires effort. If you just sit back and wait to see what happens, then you're looking at it. Marketing requires building relationships. And what was that quote you had in the very beginning, Mike?
Marketing is just sharing your passion.
Marketing is sharing your passion. And I saw another one that was very similar to that. That was marketing is sharing your passion, or one of those words, with people who are interested. So look, I mean, there's all kind of marketing quotes. So, but I want to take anybody has to go, then we'll see you next time. But if you can stay around a few minutes, I did want to see if anyone had any questions for Mike. Any questions? Okay, then we expect your book sales to be through the roof next week, because you know all about it. Jeremy.
No, I just had a comment on awards. I didn't even think about awards for tabletop role-playing games, so I looked it up, and there's 4 major awards that they give out for tabletop role-playing games that I'll submit to you now that I didn't even consider before. So thank you.
Very good. See, very good. I took a lot of notes on that. I didn't know that Joanna Penn, whom I follow religiously, she and Mark Dawson, I paid for some of their training, but I didn't realize she had so many. But here's what I want you to get from, if you look at Joanna Penn and all the things that are available from her website that are free, that list of editors, free. List of the other things that he had, free. So the more popular you get, the more book sales you have from some of these people that we follow, you'll see how much they give away. They are very generous. Pamela Hutchins, who's somebody that have you met Pamela? Mike, have you ever heard her speak or anything? Because she used to be the one that was that ran the Houston Writers Guild. It was her deal for several years. But she teaches on ads specifically right now. But she is the most generous person that I have ever worked with in any way. And she's got this training that she does. It's 3 days online, and it's like $600. And every time she has an empty slot, she contacts me and says, hey, I know how much you use this to help other authors. So if you're interested, I've got a slot, and it's absolutely free. So
Mike.
it's very generous. So the more, and listening to you talk, Mike, did you hear how many books he gives away for the marketing? It's very important that you understand that in order for somebody to tell other people about your book, they have to first know about it, and they have to read it. And so you being generous with giving them gives them an opportunity to tell other people about it. So very important that you understand that giving a book away is not a lost cause. That is an investment in future sales of your book. So no other comments, no other questions?
I got one.
James.
Okay, Mike, how often do you run your Amazon ads, and when do you run them?
I run them continuously, and at Christmas time, I'll double down on them. And I'll tell you this, so my college teaching book, it used to have about 4.5 average Amazon reviews, and over the last year or so, I've started getting more negative ones, and it's creeped all the way down to like 3.5, which is awful. But I have 51 reviews. But again, when you run an Amazon ad, they see the cover of the book and the number of stars, and that's the thing in the number next to it. So as my numbers went down from 4.5 to 3.5, my Amazon ads became less effective for that one book. I'll still run ads at Christmas on that one book, or maybe if I run a special price or something, but I don't run many ads on that one. When I have a new book come out, like I just launched the one about Texas off-road racing, I buy, Amazon ads from pretty much day one, but I don't expect a lot of sales because I don't have many reviews on day one. And so as my reviews come in and I start winning awards and I can add that to the listing, over time, those ads become more effective. My 14 Steps to Self-Publishing book, my ads, they remain very effective, but they do get stale. They don't last forever. Maybe they'll last 2 months, 6 months, whatever, you never know. And then at some point they just sort of hit a brick wall, and you can keep tweaking them and work on the bid prices on the ones that are effective and get rid of the keywords that are not effective. And so they get better, but at some point you just have to start a fresh ad, and that's what I do. I just continuously run them. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks.
One of the things that I was reading about earlier this week in one of the blogs that I read said that, and I forget who, it was CJ, did I send that to you and Lydia? Or no, I sent it to somebody that we're working, but it was like, the more you test where something is, whether it's working or not, and get rid of the things not working and add more things in to be tested, the better your results are going to be. So constantly be testing. Is it working? If it's working, good. If not, do something different. And Pamela is very, and she to me is one of the gurus on the ads. She and Mark Dawson are both really big on the ads. But she was like, she always says, make sure you're looking to see what's working. And if it's working, keep, the same thing, but make sure you're testing it, because if you don't test it, you don't know what's working and what's not working. So make sure you stay up to date on what is working with there. So so good. That was a great question, James. I appreciate that. Anybody else? Question, statement, comment? Okay, then Mike, thank you very much, very much. Again, just remember, marketing is where it's at. Marketing and getting the word out. If people don't know about your book, they can't buy it. If you don't tell people about it, they don't know about it. So the days are gone when you can just buy a book and go to the bookstore and start having book sales. So pay attention, especially I love the part about through the pandemic and what we've been doing, what all of us have been doing to sell more books, get more responses during this time. So thank you, Mike. I look forward to hearing you again and seeing you again in person one of these days. So have a great week, and we'll see you guys on Friday for the mastermind.